Hi. Today, everything you touch is made out of plastic, especially in automotive restoration and just general repairs. You'll encounter broken plastic, cracked plastic, and things like that. We're going to cover an ATV that we're rebuilding, and this is a part that we bought, and there's actually has some cracks in it, as you can see indicated in the orange areas. Well, we're going to repair that, and then we're going to show some other repairs that have been done using this simple little $16 tool from Harbor Freight. It's an 80-watt plastic welding kit, and inside of it is looks almost like a soldering gun. It's basically a little triangular heated element where you can actually melt the plastic. It has some screen in there for reinforcement, and we'll discuss this later. Some basic rods, a cleaner, and then a holder for the soldering gun while it heats up so you don't burn your tabletop or whatever. But for the most part, for filler rod, we're going to use a milk jug. It's made out of HDPE, and it's a very universal type of material, and all you would do is just cut it into strips. And what I usually do is I have a bag of them all ready to go, and this seems to work well for many applications. And many times when you're doing a repair, you can also cut little pieces off in discrete areas. This is some parts from the ATV that I spliced some pieces together, and these were leftovers. So this is great filler rod too, is if you can grab some from the parent material, that works well. So follow along, and we'll get started. The first thing we're going to want to do is kind of clean around the repairs. Right now there's paint and there's some marker indicating the damage that we will remove. Just due to the fact is that once you start welding, you don't want to have black splotches or anything like that into your welded area. Depending on what's on it, this might take a little bit of time and scrubbing. So I will continue doing this, and then we will return. Now that the part is cleaned up the best we can, what we're going to do is just start tacking these tacking these cracks together a little bit with some small welds. I still have some leftover material from some repairs I did in the past. So what I'm going to do is just cut a little small piece for now. I'm going to hold this together. I'm going to take our gun, melt the piece, and that'll hold it into place. Hold this together, and I'm just going to fuse that together like so. And let that set and cool. So there, as you can see, that's our first tack, and now that whole crack is at least held together. I'm going to kind of do the same thing over here. This one's not as drastic, but I will still use a little bit of filler material. Cut off a piece. Let it stick. Hold the pieces together. And let that cool. Alright, we have another small crack. We'll kind of do the same thing. I'll just take a little bit off of this spare piece. Mark in the crack. Let it cool. This area here is it's a big crack and it's going to require some filler, so again we're going to do the same thing, this time with a bigger piece, and just heat it up and work its way in. And once that's set, I'll just hold that in place and let that cool. Usually the more material you put on, the longer it takes to cool. You can kind of see it changing color, and at least now it's fixtured. Now for this big crack here, what we're going to do is we'll tack it in one more spot, and then at that point what we will do is we'll use some screen to help reinforce it. Again, that tack broke loose, so what you can do is just heat the material up some more. And let that cool. And this tack let loose too, but you just keep working it as needed. And let that cool. So you can see it's looking better already. Next, we're going to take a piece of this screen and we'll cut a piece of screen that will cover that, and what we'll do is embed it into the plastic, and that'll help hold it together. So I'm going to get some scissors and we're going to cut this and be on our way. Measure it, and cut it something like this here. Put it over like that, and then all we end up doing is, to start it, we'll just heat this up. And it'll start to embed into the plastic. Once you get to the point where it's kind of embedded in the plastic, what you can do is you start working it back and forth, and it'll actually start to push the plastic through the openings in the screen, as you can see, and that helps encapsulate the screen material. It takes a little time. You don't want to rush it. You just keep working your way around. And you just, if you want, you can do a quick check on the front. You can kind of see what it looks like. It's definitely all getting held together pretty well. So now you can see the screen's embedded in the plastic's up through the pores. That actually looks pretty good. When you look at the front, it's pretty decent. Held together, and once that cools, that's a pretty strong repair. We got a couple of small cracks here. We'll start working those a little bit. We'll use a little bit of filler rod, and we'll fix these up. And when you're done, you can spend a little bit of time smoothing it. Cut up a little more filler rod for this. Work this a little bit more. One little crack here we can kind of smooth over. Working. Let that cool. But that's pretty much all you need to do. You know, use material to fill. If you can't, just fuse it together. And if it's a big crack, you just use a little bit of screen as reinforcement. And if you look at the front, it's decent. You know, you could try to fill it in and weld from this side, but from an aesthetics point of view, it's going to look a lot worse. That's up to you. It will definitely make it a little bit stronger, you know, welding it from both sides, but at least you know, it's held together, and it's strong, and it's a functional repair. We will clean this all up, get all of the overspray off. We're going to take the stickers off, and then we will put it back onto our four-wheeler that we're working on. This is a Honda 200SX that we've been working on, and a couple of the repairs that we have done with this Harbor Freight kit are as follows. This here is a reinforcement strip that we ended up making out of a sheet of high-density polyethylene. We bent it up in a vise to give it a couple of angles, and then we actually welded it with the tool into each of the individual fenders. It's not exactly the prettiest thing, but it's structural and it's very strong. Also, the left fender here was spliced together with this one. It was just held together with a series of cable ties, and we actually cut it and then just welded the two pieces together and actually filled the holes in where the zip ties were with some of the filler rod that we made from pieces that we cut off. And also, if we go back here, you can see that there was a tab totally missing from this rear fender. Again, we took a piece of the high-density polyethylene sheet, welded it into place, drilled the hole, and now we have a mounting point for this mud flap that will go into here. We can go around back, And if you go inside the little tool area, these were totally blown out, and what we're actually able to do was, again, take a piece of high density polyethylene, weld it into position, and then we actually ground the slot. So now we've got firm material around here. We'll put a fender washer in there and a nut, and it'll actually fasten. And you can see again some of the high density polyethylene right there, welded exactly the same thing. And all of this was done with a little bit of time and a simple $15 tool. Okay, now that we plastic welded the top cowl for this Honda 200SX, you can see it installed. I removed all the decals, took some thinner and cleaned off all the overspray and cleaned up the part, and you can see our work that we did, the cracks down in here. It's definitely functional now. It's strong, it's sturdy, it's definitely going to work well for this application. A little bit of time, a $16 plastic welder, and you're capable of bringing parts like this back into serviceable condition. And as you can see here, I've got the little splash guard mounted and stuff like that. So the plastic on this ATV is all set, ready to install the wheels and ready to go for a test run. Also, you can see over here, this is a plastic belt guard that we repaired using the same principles. Inside of here, there's a piece of screen holding the pieces together. This hinge was broken out. We took care of that. And this is definitely a serviceable part also. On another side, here's a piece that I did from a refrigerator, and it was cracked and broken, and we did exactly the same thing with this, is embed some of the screen into it, fuse the plastic into it, used a little bit of HDPE from a milk jug as a filler rod, and this is a serviceable part. This part is no longer available, so it's really nice to be able to fix things and get them serviceable when you can't find the parts. That concludes this video. Thanks for watching, and more great tips and tricks and how-tos to come.